Unbelievable. This is the third time in a row where I get to talk about something that I like. Believe it or not, I don't like to complain and whine, especially not on this channel. Like, I want to be excited about the things that I'm talking about because I am a gamer. You know, I do consider myself a geek before it was cool. Back when you would actually get bullied if you are a geek. But I know if you want the audience, if you want people to watch and share your videos and you want engagement on your channel, you have to talk about outrage. You have to talk about things that upset people. And I don't want to do that. I want to talk about things that excite me. You know, maybe this is going to be a positive, a channel filled with optimism. But yeah, BattleStar Galactica, you know, it happened when your grandmother was in diapers, which means that I got to see it. It was a cool show, but it didn't manage to stand out. Let's put it like this. I think it was overshadowed by things like Star Trek and Andromeda, Hercules in Space, you know, even though they came later, but like people actually knew about them a lot more than they did about BSG. But the remake of Battlestar Galactica did stand out. And it happened at a time where there was an influx of sci-fi in space. A lot of TV shows focusing around spaceships, focusing around space battles. People were actually getting burned out by it. But at the time, even within that culture, Battlestar Galactica managed to stand out. And the reason it managed to stand out is because it focused a lot on character drama. It focused a lot on interesting philosophical topics. And yeah, it managed to get a big audience. And I think it also managed to destroy Stargate. Because Stargate, for some reason, decided to stop airing their SG-1 and Atlantis and focus on spaceship drama with Stargate Universe. And that's where it did bad and it got cancelled. So yeah, a lot of other shows try to copy on the formula of Battlestar. And I think it's because like they could cut down on cost. Because now they didn't have to make crazy aliens. They didn't have to focus on a lot of space battles. They could have entire episodes that take place on the ship and focused around character drama with very little special effects. So I think that's why Stargate tried to copy them, and obviously it failed. Now, I also like the idea of the story. You know, it's about a story about oppression. And again, like, I'm burned out of these stories. It's nothing wrong with seeing, oh, these people are getting oppressed type of TV show. But like this one was done in an interesting way because the humans oppressed the Cylons, and then the Cylons rose up and freed themselves from the humans. But then the Cylons decided to genocide the humans. So, you know, it asks the question, like, when does the oppressed become the oppressor? Like, at which point is it okay to, you know, rise up against your oppressor, but at which point you should stop? At which point you should say, okay, this is enough. Because obviously if you push it too far, you become the bad guy. And I love this in the show. And it was also about that while the Cylons were in the right initially and they managed to rise up, they also managed to create their own culture. And their culture was also flawed because they also started oppressing the Raiders and the Centurions. So it ended up as the people that were supposed to be the good guys, you know, the Cylons, ended up as being as the bad guys. So I kind of like it. I remember at the time I was kind of annoyed that there weren't any aliens in Battlestar because the original one did have aliens. And the reason it didn't have aliens is because one of the actors, apparently, which plays Adama, he actually had in his contract that if he sees any aliens, his character is going to faint on screen, and then they're going to have to write him off of the show. So this was discussed, apparently, from the beginning. And when I was looking at it, I was a little bit upset, because it's like, you know, like, come on, a sci-fi without aliens, like, what are you doing? But in a way, it kind of allowed to focus more on the actual characters and this drama between the humans and the Cylons. So that was kind of good, you know, now that I think about it. Another thing that I was disappointed is that I was expecting once they get to Earth, there's going to be a military on Earth and they're going to join against the fight with the Cylons, right? But like, no, they didn't do that. The ending, I'm not going to spoil for it if you didn't see it, but it's considered to be a major disappointment for a lot of people in the series. They didn't like it. But again, like, this is not about the end, it's about the journey, you know. And the journey was definitely quite interesting. And as I mentioned, like, they raised a lot of philosophical questions. For example, what do they do with currency? Because, you know, they were now on a space voyage. The economy was just running on fumes. And people would show up to work because they were expected to show up to work. But like, what happens when people start figuring it out? Like, hold on a little bit, you know, the money that we have don't really have any value. Like, there's no more government, there's no more. So, you know, like, how do they fix these issues? And another interesting issues that they had was, how do you get people to educate their children? Right? Because again, like, this was the story of like a couple of, I think it was like 50,000 people that managed to survive an apocalypse, and they're now traveling into space to find the Earth. And the problem was like, okay, well, just because the father was a farmer, that doesn't mean that the child should be a farmer as well. Like, you're basically creating a class system now that people can't escape from. Because it was expected that every engineer would train their kid to also be an engineer. So what they do is, like, they create another system that's just as bad. They had a lottery. So, you know, like, every child would get assigned to another position based on the lottery that they would have. Which, in my opinion, is even a worse system than the previous one. Because it's still the same, right? Like, it's still, okay, like, I'm now being assigned to be a farmer, even though I have no aptitudes for it. And meanwhile, someone else gets to be assigned to be a politician. Like, how is that fair? Right? So, I love the way they would raise these problems that didn't really have any decent solution, but, you know, it was interesting question. Now, I don't know if they're going to do this again, because it's 2020. Every single TV show that comes out is blatant propaganda. And by propaganda, it means they will not let the answer to a question they pose be left out to the viewer, right? Because that's the difference between art and propaganda. Art allows for interpretation. Propaganda makes absolutely sure that you get the message. So all of these stories that they will have would make sure that you get the correct message out of them. And I think that would ruin the show. You know, I think that would definitely be for a minus rather than a plus. They say they want to actually keep this in the continuity, so I don't get what they're going to do with it, because the story was pretty much a closed loop, like, kind of get what would happen. So maybe we're going to see what happens on Earth. I don't know, it's going to be interesting either way. They could have chose to go with a reboot, they could have chose to go with a remake or a prequel. Actually, never mind, they did try a prequel. They had this very sexy lady on the art as well. But the prequel, I think it had 1 or 2 seasons before it got canceled. So yeah. But it's going to be on NBC Universal new streaming service, Peacock. How many streaming services are there now? Like, seriously, it was easy when Netflix was around and that was the only one, and you would just buy Netflix. Now you need, like, if you want to watch everything, you need like 4 or 5 streaming services. And it's kind of funny because I'm complaining, right? But back in the day, you actually had to buy the movies. Like, if you wanted to watch something at home legally and, you know, like, support the people that made it, you had to buy the DVD. And there were people that had, like, DVD bots. But yeah, a lot of other people just chose to sell the 7 Seas. And now, because there's so many streaming services, the 7 Seas are being open to some people. That I would advise you to do something like this. Subscribe to NBC Universal and give them cash, of course. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see any news about this coming up. I don't know anything about it. I tried doing a lot of research and trying to find out as many information as I could. But unfortunately, other than the fact that it's coming in 2022, not much is out there. Hopefully it's not going to be woke garbage. Like, I really hope not. I mean, look, BattleStar Galactica was already very progressive. You know, you had the lesbians before it was cool. You had people of color before it was cool. I don't mind any of that. Okay, you can put all of that into the new TV show. But like if I see it on the front page, like the very first thing they do to advertise it is wokeness. It's like, hey, look, we got lesbians here. I will tune out. Because that's not why I watch Battlestar Galactica. I don't watch it for the lesbian. I watch it for the story and the plot. So you best make sure that the first time you talk about it, it shows me why the plot is interesting and why I should watch it. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.